Hey, thanks for checking out Next Level Carpentry and joining me on punch list day here on this kitchen remodel project. I started this project about 6 months ago, and you can see in these photos what the kitchen used to look like with stained wood cabinets, black countertops, and a rather dated look. Because this is an older home, there were extenuating circumstances during the remodel which account for a good deal of the 6 months elapsed time since the project started. But you can see here and now the transformation to a modern kitchen. Viewers of Next Level Carpentry saw a video about a range hood, a couple of videos about that, and also the True Position hardware drilling jig that I used for installing the hardware on these cabinets. And that leads me to today with a short punch list, and the main item on that punch list that I want to show is the versatility of the True Position cabinet hardware jig, because I need to drill holes for shelf clips to support these shelves. On a typical project with custom cabinets, there'd be a whole string of holes on each side, and then the customer figures out where they want the shelves. But because I have the ability to drill accurate holes on site, I was able to put temporary spacers between these shelves so my client could figure out what they want on what shelf, what height the shelves can go, and then ultimately I just drill 4 holes for the clips for each shelf in the exact position that they end up with, and then there's no extra holes showing on this open cabinet. I worked out details with the client and her designer to figure out where the shelf spacing was going to be, and then I transferred marks to this piece of green tape that you see stuck on the style of this cabinet. And by aligning the shelves to those marks, they're able to put everything on the shelves just the way they want it. And at this stage of the game, I don't want to screw this up, so I'm relying on this True Position jig to get this done. Admittedly, there's dozens of other ways to go about this. If I would know where these shelves were going to be when I put the hardware in, I would have drilled these holes then, but it took a little bit of time to decide what was going to go on the shelves and where the best position for them was. So here I am, punch list day, drilling a dozen holes to finish up the job. With marks on the green tape as a guide, I can remove the shelves in their temporary positions and then use those marks to line up the jig for drilling holes so that the shelves come out where they need to be. I apologize for the audio in this video. It's over 100 degrees outside, and the fan from the air conditioner is providing a backdrop of white noise that's going to make this difficult to hear. You can see that I used scraps of thin OSB as temporary supports for these shelves, while decisions were made for what goes where, and they're easily removed for the shelf clip hole drilling process. Students of the Next Level Carpentry channel might remember a video I did before showing how to install thick shelves with hidden hardware, where I used the space between the shelves to hold them up. They were adjustable, but that was a different client, a different purpose. And I'm not able to use that process here because this cabinet has a face frame on it and the shelves can't slide straight in. So I'm using regular shelf clips for this. They're clear with 5mm pins to support the shelves. Although the jig is primarily designed for installing cabinet hardware, all the same components are used for the shelf pin drilling process. The shelf pin hole drilling guide you'll see me use in this video has hardened steel bushings spaced at 32mm, which is the standard for shelf pin spacing. These shelf pin guide drilling bars also double up as spacers for drilling holes for extra wide or extra long poles. Hardened steel bushings in the guide bars serve to align the 5mm bit that comes with the kit so that the holes are drilled straight in and easily. A handy 5mm depth stop allows me to set the depth that I'm drilling the holes for these shelf clips so that I don't drill out the side of a finished cabinet. Because I'm drilling individual holes for individual shelves, I'm not using the shelf pin clip drilling fixtures in the typical way for most cabinets, or that I would be doing if I was using this to drill some holes in a cabinet shop. The guide bar for drilling cabinet hardware has adjustments so that you can space the holes off the front of a cabinet, etc. But like I said, because I'm just drilling individual holes for individual shelves, I'm going to use these same components in a little different configuration that's more straightforward, and frankly, it's all that's needed. With that said, I'm just going to set up one of the shelf clip hole drilling guide bars here by turning the thumb screws out and then taking the extension bar that slides in to the channel on that guide bar. It locks tightly in place with those thumb screws, and that allows me to set the height of the shelf clip holes. Easy peasy. The space from the end of the thumb screws to the center of that hole in this configuration is about 40 millimeters, which is a good spacing to come off the back of the cabinet and then be offset behind the front face frame. Depth of the drilled holes is critical on a job like this because, as I said, I don't want to drill out the side of a finished cabinet. So I'll use the Allen wrench that's included in the kit to set the depth stop collar so the drill bit drills a hole deep enough for the shelf clip, but not so deep it comes out the other side of a 3/4 inch panel. And that setting will be just right. I really like the design and the quality of this depth stop collar because once that set screw is tightened down, that collar is going to remain in the exact position that I put it in, so I don't have to worry about spoiling a cabinet with a hole that's too deep. And because of the clamping action of the collar, it doesn't damage the drill bit or make little detents in the bit that wouldn't allow fine adjustments for other jobs. If you like these drill bit depth stop collars as much as I do, you'll be glad to know that True Position makes them in a whole range of sizes for drilling operations other than shelf clip holes. Although only the 5mm one is included with this hardware installation jig. Because there's a 3/16 or 5mm offset between the center of the shelf pin clip hole and the top of the shelf clip. I'll offset the marks on my masking tape so that the shelf comes out on the line and not the center of the shelf clip. Then I can transfer those adjusted marks to the back edge of the front stile with a light pencil mark for lining up the jig. Since this drilling operation is a bit unusual, I'll use an unusual setup for setting the height of the holes that I'll drill for shelf clips. I slip the T-bar into one end of the shelf pin drilling guide bar and then use the extending bar to ultimately set the height of the holes that I'll drill. With this arrangement, the thumb screws are all screwed in to the same depth, whereas if I don't put the T-bar in the slot, two of the thumb screws will be screwed farther in and won't hold the jig parallel to the face frame. Oh yeah, and remember to move the edge guide from the T-bar, otherwise it'll really get in the way. There's a couple complicating factors on this particular cabinet. One is the fact that this face frame is so deep, and the other thing is that there's a cleat around the top of the inside of the cabinet. So when I set up the jig, I have to compensate for those things, and for these marks I just transferred them around the back and the inside. But the upshot of it is, once I know the position where I want the center of the shelf clip, I just line it up with one of the marks on the shelf pin clip drilling bar, like so. And when I drill that hole, it will be spaced back 40 centimeters. And I just flip the jig to drill the other hole in the back. True Position Tools is going to start including a couple of small rare earth magnets in future drilling jig kits. And the purpose of those magnets are to replace the pirate tape on that hole, because you can just clip those little magnets over the holes you don't want to drill through rather than using a piece of tape. So that's a nice feature for drilling drilling holes for cabinet hardware. In this instance, because I'm flipping the jig front to back, I'm not going to put magnets front and back. I'm going to use tape to cover up holes that I don't want to drill. And uniquely, here I'm just drilling one hole, not a series of three or a full sequence. So I'm going to have more tape than holes when I go to drill these. Well, there it is, half a roll of tape later. I'm drilling one hole, that's it. One hole in the front, one in the back, everything else is taped up. And I admit that that is overkill, but it's been a long, hot day, and if there was ever a time to drill a wrong hole, it would be now, and I want to avoid that. But the bottom line is, once you've adapted the jig to your site conditions, got everything set up, drilling holes is easy peasy. Got the depth stop collar here. The thickness of the drill guide bars this way helps me align the drill bit if I'm just drilling through a thin sheet of 1/8 inch material or something as a template. It's too easy to get the holes drilled off. But as it is, I'm going to drill these 4 holes. Simple as that. You probably can't see it. too well in the camera. I'll try to get a close-up for you in a bit. I'll mention here that the way this is set up, there's only one thumb screw holding this bar in place. So I'm making sure that's extra tight, and I want to make sure that I don't bump this into the top of the cabinet and change that length. In normal situations or more typical situations, there'd be 2 or 3 thumb screws holding that bar in place, and it's less likely to move. Four holes, perfectly lined up, evenly spaced from the top. Just like that. And no holes on the outside of the cabinet. And the center of those holes are lined up with my pin center mark on the style, just like they need to be. $25, 26 and a quarter, what? 25. So there's a bit of insight into how this jig can be set up and adapted to different job site conditions. There's a lot of great shelf pin drilling fixtures and templates that you can get that have all the guide holes in them. This jig can be set up for use in a shop, but it's not, in my opinion, it's not designed as a production jig. I like this a lot more. It's a lot more adaptable, universal, portable than most of the fixtures for doing this sort of work, and it allows me to drill holes in an exact spot. These don't have to fall out on the 32 millimeter layout because that's not necessarily what they want for this cabinet. I want to mention that on the video I did showing the jig for cabinet hardware installation, if you guys remember, I took a piece of MDF and used double stick tape to put it on the back of the drill guide to help offset for the way shaker doors are so that the jig lays flat on those doors. If you haven't seen that, here's a link to that video. You can check it out. But the reason I bring it up here is that True Position is now including a set of special thumb screws, a little kit here. And those thumb screws have a little soft pad on them, so it's kind of like a non-stick pad. And rather than double face taping a fixed piece of MDF to the back, you can screw these little guys in to a pre-drilled and tapped hole on the back of the drilling guides for cabinet hardware. And then setting that screw allows you to compensate for the offset between the face of a shaker door and the recessed panel in the same door. As I understand it, in future kits, 2 of these thumb screws will be included, and I'm not quite sure the history, but the drill guide blocks have that drilled and tapped hole in them. And this is kind of a bad camera angle, but you can see how that thumb screw can be adjusted to compensate for the recess between the panel and the frame of a door or drawer. And that just helps stabilize the guide while drilling holes like this for pulls that are placed on the recessed panel. If that's not real clear, you can watch that other video again to see what I did last time with the MDF to accomplish that same purpose. Not to belabor the point, but as a result of that last video, I had some interaction by email with a fine fellow named Russ Prince, who saw the limitations of the MDF spacer block, and Russ made 3D printed ones. Check this little guy out here. I hope you can see this thing. He used a flexible printing material for his 3D printer. I'm not sure the specifications of that, but that is set up so that it just snugly fits on the back of the guide block. It's held on there just because by nature of the pressure on it, and it has 2 holes in it. You can see here, so the drill bit goes through those holes. You can see that, I think. And because there's 2 holes, this guide can go on either way. So this is a great solution. I can include a link to a PDF file on Dropbox if anybody's interested in 3D printing those. I think Russ is willing to share his file, and I will do that. And we'll also say that the limitation of this and my original solution is it's a fixed thickness, but a person could probably 3D print a set of these of varying thicknesses as a workaround. But the guys at True Position came up with this thumb screw as kind of a more universal solution to drilling on recessed fronts. A lot of information. The other thing I'll tell you is that as I understand it, True Position is working on a different case for future toolkits, and in there will be a little compartment that opens up. It'll have these little thumb screws in there, as well as the magnets for covering the holes that aren't in use. So that's a cool upgrade. That'll be included in the kits. I'm not sure exactly which ones, but you can certainly find that out from the website. And with all this information I'm conveying, I do need to tell subscribers, True Position is not sponsoring this video. They sent me the tools. I like talking about it, and I'm proud to show off their stuff, but they're not sponsoring the video. The other thing is that a special offer code NLC for 10% off anything on the True Position website through June 30th, 2021 is still valid. So if this is of interest to you, go check that out and use that special offer code and put a tool kit like this to use on your projects. So that's all the sales pitch. I got to get to work and get the rest of these holes drilled, and I'll try to get a couple close-up shots after I've reset the jig so that you can see what the drilling looks like. I can take the T-bar out of the drilling guide for the top set of holes, which makes the fixture a little less complicated to use. But like before, I square the marks around from the tape around to the inside of the cabinet so I can line up the holes. And this brings up the point that I'm drilling all 4 holes with one single measurement setting rather than a whole series of measurements. There's the setup for drilling the top shelf. I'm using a higher hole in the bar. All 4 thumb screws are engaged on the bar so the spacing is even. Got it taped front and back, ready to drill. With the last set of holes so far down from the top of the cabinet, I switched the fixture around a bit. I just have the bar secured by one thumb screw in the top drilling guide and one thumb screw engaged on the bottom. These 2 screws will balance the jig parallel to the face frame, and I'm drilling the very bottom hole and use the masking tape to keep me from drilling the wrong space again. And that's because masking tape is cheap, cabinets aren't. And even though the jig is stretched out to its limit, I feel confident in the accuracy of the placement of these holes. With all the holes accurately drilled, all that's left to do is to clean up my layout marks and mess and put the shelves in place. And that's what I like to see. Nice solid shelves, no tipping, no rocking. All perfectly lined up with the marks so that all the tchotchkes look just like they're supposed to for the client and the decorator. Now I get to call it a day. I wanted to add a few comments here at the end of the video. You can see that the decorator came back and got things staged in the shelves. Everything's just as it needs to be. And after waiting months and months to drill those holes, the whole thing is kind of anticlimactic. And part of that is the result of having this universal fixture for drilling those holes. So I wanted to mention that, plus the fact that when I was editing yesterday's video, I realized how puffy that light makes my eyes look. Man, pollen's a little crazy this year, so I look like I've not slept for a month, but that's not the case. The other thing I wanted to mention is I think the hallmark of a good fixture is its adaptability, or a good jig. And you saw how I was able to use various parts of this fixture, adapting them to each other for this job. And this is just one situation. Every job's got its own particulars. So I like the fact that the jig is adaptable for that kind of situation. And what I wanted to mention was this guide bar is great because it's clean and straight for setting the location of the shelf pin holes, and using the T-bar worked to extend that out, but it was a little bit awkward having that extra T-bar there. In some instances that T will act as a handle, other instances it might just get in the way, and if I was doing more of this all day every day, I would just probably order another one of these bars and slip it in here. But a simple solution for that is I just took a piece of hardwood, milled it to the same size as the bar that comes with the kits, or that's available with kits. I don't think it comes in the standard kit, but you can order it separately if I understand that right. But with this bar, I can add lengths to this thing. And then another useful thing about having that piece is that I could make extra, and I probably will, and put them in the kit. I'll just make extra short pieces of that infill bar, and then I can use it to set these pins so that they're all at the same depth. Because like you saw earlier, if you screw this thumb screw in until it hits the bar, it's at one position, and if you screw it all the way in until it's tight, it's another position, and that could create offset in some situations. But I'm saying all this to say that it's pretty simple to just make a blank piece that fits in there that's the same size. Everything's hunky-dory, and it's easy to just make and store an extra piece. And the main point is that it speaks to the universality, the universalness, you know what I'm saying. It speaks to that about the jig, because they didn't make some crazy looking extrusion that you couldn't replicate, but a piece of hardwood can easily do that. So I am going to wrap up the jig, wrap up the video. Thank you for watching Next Level Carpentry, and I hope you'll come back to check out future videos and spend a little time browsing through 150 or so videos that are here on the channel. So that's it. Until next time, take care. Enjoy your summer. Oh, you're still watching. Yeah, I'm just getting wrapped up here, and I will remind you again, because you're still watching at this point, if this jig is anything you're interested in, check out that special offer code from True Position Tools, because it might just be a helpful thing for projects you're working on. And I'll also apologize if this seems like an overbearing sales pitch. I never intended to be that way. I've got one opportunity to show the sequence of using this and how it can be adapted. So I'm taking it and making a video, even though you might think I should have a white belt on, plaid pants, and white patent leather shoes when I'm doing the sales pitch. But anyways, for everybody that's watching to the end of the end of the end, thanks again. And what the heck, I'm going to take the camera handheld, do a quick little walk around this kitchen to give you an idea of how the whole thing came out after an extended project timeline. Starting here, you can see stone columns that I regrouted, did some refitting of the shelf, and adapted old crown molding to new at the cabinets. Obviously new cabinets all along, new backsplash, a whole lot more open feel to the kitchen. There's the free range hood plans range hood. That's all piped in with some nice ducting and a super nice quiet fan. This is the new pantry unit. You saw that when I was putting hardware on it. That's all set up and done. And yes, one can light is still off center. I don't know if they're going to ask me to change that at some point. That's the conflict between the old configuration and the new. But just nice clean built-in fridge there. Nice view. Redid some stuff on that window. Rebuilt the wall behind this sink. Did a whole bunch of energy efficiency things there. And here's nice little cabinets. I really like those with glass doors, and then the inside of the cabinet is stained to match the cabinet down below. Here's the little hutch we just put the shelves in. And then looking around here, this is a new 12-foot wide Pella patio door that replaced an old French door with some windows on the side. And then this whole wall here was opened up and changed to add a fourth window to the existing three. And that completes the lap around the kitchen remodel project. And I'm signing off for sure this time. Bye.